Hey guys, here again with another Shirogorov knife. This one is on the Custom Division Hati Bronze. Now this knife debuted in the later half of 2018. I believe it was available at a Russian show, but its first US debut was at USN G10 at the end of August, where I happen to have won one myself. This isn't the exact knife, but it does bring back memories, really good memories of that show. Now, 2018 was a really awesome year for Custom Division. That's not only an opinion that I have, but also many other Shirogorov enthusiasts. And the reason for that is that there were a lot of really cool features that the 2018 knives had that were, many of them borrowed from the customs, that marked a very, obvious point in the Custom Division timeline where the features just exploded compared to the custom division knives before. Now, that's not to say that the knives that came before it are bad. Of course, some of my favorite custom division knives, such as the Hati were released just 1 year prior, and the CD Hati and F5 Silk Slim were released many years before that as well. But again, there are just a lot of awesome features, of which we'll cover in today's video, that came out on not only this knife, but also the other three knives that were in the same year. The 111 titanium, F3 bolster, and what's that last knife? I forgot. The neon damasteel. But let's go ahead and take a look at this knife. Now, size-wise, of course, it's an F95 size knife, so we have 4 inches of cutting length and around 8 3/4, just under 9 inches of overall length. Nothing too new or surprising there. So let's go ahead and dive into the features of the knife. Now, the blade here, as you can see here, is S90V. We have beautiful blade profile here, this wide belly blade profile, which is something I think we take for granted nowadays with these newer knives, even the newer production knives, the F3NS, the F95, NL, new style version. They all have this wide sloping blade belly, but back in this time period, the production knives pretty much had the normal old F95 blade profile where, it's much straighter here in the belly, much farther out before it started to curve up. And so seeing this blade shape, which I colloquially refer to as the F5 blade profile, since the F5, I believe, was the first knife that it came out on, was really nice to see, especially in, non-F5 knives. The blade flats on here as well are quite large, something that we see in a couple of other knives, the first run of F5 Silk Slims with the non-blue anodized clip, and also the F95 Hex Custom Division had these wider flats. But the satin finish combined with these, wider flats or taller flats just looks stunning, gives some more area for the satin finish to really show itself off, again, which is one of the primary contributing factors to the smoothness of these custom division knives. And of course, we can't forget about the cutout here. Now, this cutout is unique to the custom division lineup. The F3 bolster, again, which came out in the same custom division year, also had the same blade cutout. But what really strikes me is just how unique that this cutout is compared to even the full customs. Now, you see here I have my F7 with a blade cutout, and you can see here that the blade cutout, while I do like it, I think it flows with the lines and the curves of the blade, it does look a little bit more minimalistic and simple when you compare it to the cutout on the Bronze Hati, which has, this kind of bump here, this chamfering inside, how it kind of rides down here, and combined with this nice jimping up on top, it looks very unique. And this is what I really like about Sergey's design language and his aesthetics. He doesn't really just straight copy stuff out from the customs and custom division most of the time. He does do it a little bit here on this knife, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But it's nice to see that, when he decided to have a cutout on a custom division knife, he didn't just take the same cutout from the full customs. He did something that's totally unique to the custom division lineup. Now, as you can see here, paired with that cutout, we have some milling done here on the flipper tab. It's not skeletonized, but it does give a nice matching look with the cutout on the blade. You can see it's also offset as well, something that Sergey does like to do, just to kind of mix it up a little bit here. And it does match up with the curved line here on the, that kind of starts at the lock bar and kind of continues on the lock side handle. Now this jimping up here on top is excellent. Now, as you can see here, the jimping is actually very similar to what my F7 has. As you can see, the spacing is a little bit wider than what you see on the normal production F95s. Here's the normal jimping that we had been used to in the past, but it's not quite as wide as what we see on the Neon Zero. This jimping right here that we see on the Neon Zero and the F3NS, I think is wholly unfunctional. It's just too wide, it's not deep enough. The blade has been finished too much on the top here so that there just isn't any bite. However, with this type of jimping here, you can see it's wider and more aggressive looking than the old style, but it just has excellent grip. And again, this is just my favorite jimping. It's also on my F7, which I absolutely love, and I love it here on this Hati Bronze as well. Now, taking a look at the show side of the blade, you can see we have that Custom Division logo. I believe it's been a couple years now since the Custom Division logo had been established, so nothing too new there. But let's go ahead and move on to the handle. And as you can see here, we have this wonderful bronze dust marble carbon fiber by Carbon Plate. Now, if you are in the market for a couple of these, or one of these, as they are a little bit hard to find nowadays, it is worth noting that you might want to be a little bit picky about the kind of show side here, since they do vary a little bit from knife to knife. I've seen a couple that have had a little bit more bronze dust, and definitely some others that have had a little bit less as well. So just something to keep an eye out for if you're looking for one of these yourself. Interestingly, we have the logo engraved here onto the handle. That's something that you usually don't see on the Hati knives and the F3s, since usually there'll be some texturing on the knife, or in this case, this bronze dust here. And I believe the reason why the production Hatis and F3s have the blade laser engraved with the logo instead of having it on the handle as with the titanium knives such as the Neon and F95 is because any texturing or this metallic dust on the handle is going to make the logo a little bit harder to see. But with the Custom Division logo on here, it's kind of makes sense that Sergey had to move the logo onto the blade. However, even back when the Custom Division logo didn't exist, he was still doing this right here. As you can see, this is a Custom Division seashell Hati from many years ago, and you can see that the blade is sterile, but there is still that logo in that same location there. Now, these handles are 3D contoured, as you would expect from a Custom Division knife. We also have beautiful milling here on the top of the handles and also on the bottom here as well. There is also very nice texturing. As you can see here, if I get it in the light just right, we have that very fine silk milling. On the show side here, it's not too aggressive, so many people don't even know that it has texturing, but if you take a look very closely in the right light, you can see that texturing, and it does show up when you run your fingers across the handle. We have that index pivot screw, which is typical of Custom Divisions, and we also have this very nice bronze pivot collar that ties into the bronze theme of this knife. Now, back then, we still had the normal large legacy style female privet screws assembly, and of course it is inverted because on Custom Divisions the actual screws are on the lock side here. It does give a clean look on the back of the knife here as well, or on the show side of the knife here as well. Moving on to the lock side, we can see here that the silk texture is much more obvious now on the titanium. And we also have these very nice anodized titanium handles. Most people, when they see this, they think it's just darkened or bronze colored titanium. But if you take a look here in the light, you can see it's much more complex than that. It has kind of these nice rose pink hues that are absolutely excellent to look at in the light. I hope my camera is picking these up sufficiently. You can see here on the lock bar insert cutout as well. But I just love the color that this knife has, not only from the bronze dust and the bronze hardware, but from this very subtly pink anodized lock side handle as well. You can see here we also have a bronze clip to match the bronze pivot collar and the backspacer as well. I really love the exotic material that Shirogrov uses when they do decide to, because usually they don't tumble the material like they do with titanium, so the machining just looks crisper. Zirconium, when they do decide to use that as well, has a similar effect. The hardware just looks crisp. It's really nice. Now, as you can see here, for those with the more astute and more eagle-eyed viewers out here, you might notice that this pattern here on the top cutout is unique for this knife. And that is true for the custom division lineup, but this milling pattern actually was used on one of the last Hatis, custom Hatis that were ever released. In USN G9 the year before, in 2017, there were a pair of Hatis, one in black and white carbo quartz, the other in very tight weave marble carbon plate, carbon fiber, that had, I believe, intrepid pattern Damascus blades. And they both had this milling pattern, which you see here on the custom division, completely exactly the same, which again is kind of when I was talking about Sergey using different patterns for custom division knives. This is not one of them. He pulled this pattern off of the custom Hatis, the last custom Hatis ever made, and it's just a little bit different. As you can see here, the cutout here on top is straight, as opposed to what we usually see on like the F5 and the Seashell Hati, where it's more curved and at an angle here. So just a very interesting note. When I saw this knife, it immediately reminded me of the unique milling on the cutouts here, and what I remember seeing on the Hatis from just a year prior. It's really a shame. The Hati was my favorite, one of my first favorite designs from Sergey, and it's really sad to see that he hasn't, to the best of my knowledge, he hasn't made one since 2017, which is quite a while ago. Now, lastly, moving on to the backspacer here, you can see it's also done that bronze material, and the clip and the backspacer is really what's contributing to that weight, that heftiness of the knife. I don't think it's overly heavy, but having it on the back here does kind of balance the blade out a little bit nicely, and the ergonomics, of course, having 3D contoured handles is really nice. I forgot to mention the blade stock is 4mm, so nothing too fancy there. It's not thick or thin in that regard. It's just the normal 4mm blade thickness. But also here as well, you can see that this knife does have single row roller bearings, and we also have the engraving for the serial, I guess the serial number for the knife. What's interesting to note here, you guys might, if you guys have had any of the custom vision knives that came out before 2018, you might notice that the kind of pattern for the numbering has changed significantly. Now, if we take a look at custom division before 2018, you can see here that we just have a single number, and that's because the knives were numbered sequentially regardless of the model. Now, this is a Seashell Hati number 80, 81 might be another completely different knife. However, in 2018, all that changed, and we have a new numbering scheme here. The first two numbers here are the year, so this is a 2018 custom division. The second two numbers are the knife, is the model knife in that series year. So this is the second custom division knife in the year 2018, and we have the last two numbers, which represents the number out of the batch of 50 and then that production run. So that's another thing that changed as well. Before 2018, custom vision knives were made in a series of 30 knives for each model, In 2018, that bumped up to 50, which was, well, only a good thing for people who are looking for this knife. If I'm looking for a Hati Bronze, it's nice to know that there are 50 of them out there instead of just 30. So I think that's a win for collectors and also for the workshop as well, since they can make some more knives and have those available for lottery at shows. Now, the Hati Bronze, there was one interesting thing that I actually found out once I had this knife that really explained some of the mysteries that I had with the model. Now, I've actually had the pleasure to handle around 6 or 7 Hati Bronzes. Some of them mine, some of them I've some of my friends. This model right here is also a friend's. Should have mentioned that at the beginning. I do appreciate him lending me the knife to do this video. But I've really had issues with the actions for pretty much almost all of them that I've handled. Now, when you think of custom vision, you think of knives that are extremely smooth, which, all of them that I have handled are. But I really had problems with the action in terms of, flipping or them being drop shut. Now, what's really interesting is that it was really either one or the other. The knife would have a really good action, but have, a really good flip with a nice firm detent, but the drop shut would just be, it would just not be a drop shut knife. Or I'd have a knife where the detent is, incredibly weak, and flipping it would require, almost getting, a wrist flick in it. But, it was drop shut. And I was wondering, why does this knife, this custom division knife, have an action that's so finicky? Like, the other custom division knives in that year were completely fine. And, custom division since then and before then have been great in my experience. So what really was making this knife so different? And to my surprise, when disassembling this knife, this little ring popped out. Now, if any of you guys have disassembled a Shirogorov knife that has, MRBS or single row roller bearings in the custom division, you'll know that the bearing race, or the bearing race that holds the bearings doesn't contact the pivot, the female pivot assembly, because there's some material that goes around, whether it be titanium or carbon fiber or Alutex. There's some material that kind of spaces out, that kind of lives in between the female pivot screw shaft and the actual bearing race itself. Now, on the Hati Bronze, what I think is when they machined the handles, there probably just wasn't enough structural stability in the material to mill that kind of raised amount of material that separates the bearing race and the female pivot screw. So they just milled it completely flat, and they milled this separate piece of material and just epoxied it into the handle to create that division. A little bit difficult to see without pictures. I do apologize for my explanation, but what I'm thinking is that this material, since it's epoxied, is going to perhaps, if it's not epoxied on perfectly, it's not going to be, it might be parallel to the rest of the handle, but it might be raised. And if it's raised, this amount of material is going to be contacting the blade flats, which I think is causing that, really poor action. That in conjunction with the detent ball pushing on the blade flat as the blade is closing, might give for some wonky, make for some wonky actions in terms of, opening and closing it. This, I can't say completely for sure. And, I'm not Sergey. This is something I do want to ask him. I'm not sure if he'll be embarrassed about it or not, but I do want to ask, was this intentional? Or I don't think that the carbon fiber just sheared off perfectly flat like this. So I do think that this is a separate piece that was machined and then just epoxied in. I can actually see some of the epoxy here, right here. You can see some of the remnants of the epoxy. But this explains why the actions have been so kind of not only lackluster, but kind of inconsistent, whether those weak detents are still allowing the blade to drop shut on the ones that do have weak detents, but the ones that do have proper detents, the blade is pretty much not drop shot at all. This might explain it. And I didn't purposely remove this, but after removing this, the action got a lot better. And of course, I definitely don't recommend you go out and do this if you do have a Hati Bronze, especially if you don't intend to keep it forever. But I want to say that mystery solved. This one has a very nice firm detent, as you can see here. And the drop shot is quite nice. So really nice action, and what I expect from a custom vision feels pretty much like what I would expect from a custom vision now. So kind of an interesting, I guess, discovery, if you want to call it that. But hopefully this can help anybody else who loves the knife but knows that the action could be a little bit better. But that's pretty much it for this knife. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This one came out a little bit long. And looking forward to seeing you guys next time in the next one. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys later.